Welcome to this lecture 2. This is a series of 3 lectures, and this is second in that series. So today I'll be talking about some of the strategies that will be very useful for high quality research. So let me just briefly discuss the agenda. We'll discuss about what we mean by high quality research, and we'll be discussing a few strategies, especially setting the research objective, analyzing yourself, acquiring some of the skills, and reading for research, and using different states of the mind, and using some of the productivity tools. In case if it gets longer in today's lecture, some part of the last topic can be moved to the third lecture too. So as I mentioned in the last class too, this is actually meant for Indian research scholars, particularly for engineering disciplines, partially applicable for science disciplines too. So most of these talk contains some of the ideas that I have known, used, or thinking that it will be good for you. Because people may have different views and they can agree or disagree. And since it's an online thing, it's possible you may get the network disruption anytime, but we will be back in a minute if that happens. Don't go away. With that, let us bring to the discussion the point of what is high quality research. Okay, so what does it mean? Right? Is it the research documentation or consisting of pages on pages of research papers filled with equations? Not necessarily. And is it the materials that are too complex to read and understand the concepts? That's again not necessarily. Or is it that items or materials or information which are simple without any equations? That is also not necessarily be high quality research. Or what require the complex proofs? No, it's not. So all these are not necessarily be high quality research. So high quality research is actually defined by just one aspect, that is impact. If there is a second one, that is once again impact, and there's a third aspect, that is again impact. Impact only defines what is a high quality research. And now, what is a research impact? So, research impact is the usefulness of your research that is making in the world. Suppose your research is useful to the world, that many other works got derived from that. Many products use your research outputs. Many tools are depending on the techniques that you developed, and even many companies that may use your research outcomes. So it's possible that your research may make a big difference in the society or in the industry, in the academy, and so on. Maybe your techniques have helped bring down the cost of certain infrastructure, or improves the efficiency of operation of certain systems. It saves time of computation, or minimizing the resource consumption. It can be in many, many different ways, but it makes a big difference. Then it can say it made an impact. Or it's possible that your research is opening up a new avenue of new significant avenues of research. For example, the area of carbon nanotube, carbon nanotube had actually made a very big impact. In fact, it actually created many new research areas. So, graphene is another area of research where the entirely new area is defined. Many new applications came up with, many new sensors are designed, many new communication, switches have been defined based on graphene, and it actually opened up a very, very large number of new research directions. That's very interesting. The entire area of nano, systems have opened up a significant avenue. In fact, that is, evidenced by many citations of your papers, many, classes teaching your algorithms, or many textbooks carrying your, circuit diagrams, or even many generations of students, reading and understanding what you have invented, and you may be even remembered as a scientist. So these are all signs of your research making an impact. Okay, so in fact, the main contribution of your impact, research impact, is that your research is creating new knowledge, hitherto unknown to the humanity. You have revealed something. You have revealed something that if you do this way, you get this output that makes a big improvement over the current system. So that is a new knowledge that you are creating through your research. In fact, in many ways, your invention can make the lives improved, and that is what is actually research impact. Now, the point is you want to do high impact research. And how do you do better research or high impact research? One is that you have to choose an impactful area, which, as I mentioned in the last lecture too, it's an emerging areas. Some areas are actually really unknown to the humanity. They need the help of scientists to do that kind of advanced knowledge and new knowledge in that. In fact, you may even try different approach to a solution that can actually result in high impact. Obviously, you need to have a significant depth of knowledge in the area to do that. So we will be discussing quite a good amount of techniques to do this, and we will also be discussing novel approach to the solution. And in fact, we have briefly mentioned how to choose an area in the last meeting, so we will not cover much of that in this area. And in the solution directions, we will discuss in the next lecture in significant ways. But today we will discuss a few possibilities. So all this collectively will lead to interesting new solutions that will eventually help you do high impact research. Okay. Now let's look at how to set up or what are the examples that will actually motivate you to do this high impact research. So in fact, when you see this high impact research, it's not easy to read and understand because this high impact research can be invisible and present all around you. Okay, so in fact, many of the successful and popularly used technologies are good examples of high impact research that you don't see as a research outcome of somebody. Okay, in fact, visible and identifiable or recognized research ideas are actually categorized sometimes as novel quality because some of the similar quality research is recognized by Nobel prizes, one of the most awarded prizes in science and technology. So, of course, there are many other research too, which are of the same level, but not necessarily winning the Nobel Prize. But winning the prize is not the impact, not the important thing here. Doing similar quality work is important because such quality research are time tested, proven, and evidenced by their impact over a period of time. Nobel Prizes are not given over the contributions of 4, 5, 6 years or so. It requires decades of research. Exceptions are there, 1 or 2 exceptions are there, but most other inventions or contributions recognized by Nobel Prizes are actually proven over a period of time about its value and research. So in fact, you must have your aim to do novel quality impactful research in you. So that's the first thing that you should have to do that. For example, let me tell you why you should have that in our context. This is actually a list of Nobel Prize winners from India. So in 1913, this is actually pre-independent. This left side list is actually pre-independent, where British people, India was still part of British India, and many of the scientists were in very good terms with the British Scientists, Royal Society of Physics, and so on. Their recommendations and their recognitions and their recognition to Indian scientists may have helped them to accomplish this kind of recognition. So in Tagore in literature in 1913 and C.V. Raman in 1930 for physics, and subsequently post-independence we have these laureates, Mother Teresa, Amartya Sen, and Kailash. I'll cross Amartya Sen because Amartya Sen worked most significantly in Harvard University in the US environment. So even though he is technically, possibly he is an Indian citizen, that's why he came into this list, but we can exclude him for this discussion. So eventually, India's history shows that only one person won a science Nobel Prize of Earth. In fact, he won the prize because of the Raman effect, and this effect had very significant impact in the development of machineries, in the application, and so on. In fact, many of the devices for measurement, especially using light, have been using Raman effect, which is one of the very, very important inventions. In fact, you must aim at a research that is on par with the Nobel quality work. Okay, that this motivation is very important. In fact, you should aim at something like this. In by 2035, you should have your photo here and your name here as the next Nobel laureate from India. Okay, so that kind of motivation is required for you to do this. Now, always you should see, since many of you are actually beginning your research, some of you are actually now in the middle of the research, or those who have got a degree in research and practicing scientist, and you should have this kind of motivation that yes, I should actually be winning the next Nobel Prize from India, and I want to do similar quality work, irrespective of whether I win that or not. So this way, you should set your research goals very, very high. Okay, very, very high. This is very important for all of us. In fact, as you see that there are about 50 people here, I'm sure there are very, very talented researchers here who will be able to do excellent quality research. Now, before you begin the research, as I mentioned earlier, in tune with the research topic selection, you should also do what is it called an analysis of the strength, weakness, and opportunities. So you should look at what are your strengths from the courses that you have taken, from the taste that you have, whether you are good in analytical or experimental or empirical research, and then you should actually utilize your ability. Your natural abilities that you have is the best thing that you have as an important resource for you. So that you can develop, because research can be done in any direction, in any way. Best quality research can be done. It's not that only analytical research is highly valued. Experimental research is equally valued. In fact, empirical research is also possible as long as you have very good strength in that. In fact, you should also look at what are your weaknesses, because if you are getting into an area where you have a natural difficulty, then it may be difficult to overcome, and you may get disappointed with the failures, and you might even avoid concluding the research too. So that way, you should understand the weakness. Either you should make an attempt to overcome or deviate from your weak areas to stronger areas where you will feel more confident about that. Then based on the opportunities, as I mentioned earlier, availability of the gates, research and instruments or facilities, institutes, you will actually decide your research topic. And in choosing this, your love for the area is very important. So if you really like this area, then naturally you will be able to do very, very good creative research. Now, uh, I often find that research needs different kinds of skills. Okay, especially successful researchers have different kinds of skill, and we can categorize it along the old saying that it said that jack of all trades, master of none. This is some people attributed to certain characters in stories where they say he knows everything, but he doesn't know anything deep. But in research, what I find is that one should be master of some area and jack of many other things. Okay, master of certain area, master of your research direction, and that alone is not enough. And you need to be a jack of many associated areas. Then only you will be able to do better quality research. Otherwise, this certain deficiency of skills can actually affect the speed of research as well as the quality of research. Now let's look at the question of how to be a master as well as how to be a slave, or sorry, a jack. Now, how to be a master? We all have this desire to be mastering on certain area. Okay, mastering, some, technical area, or some research area, some artistic area, and so on. And in fact, there have been books and books on this topic, new as well as old. But I find there is only one thing that is required for becoming a master. That is 10,000 hours. Okay, this has been scientifically proven that for a normal human being, with the ordinary brain, which means not damaged, okay, or with not any physical or other medical damage. Uh, uh, Such a person with a normal brain needs a training of 10,000 hours to make the capability to be called to master any particular area. Okay, you can take many examples. Say, for example, A.R. Rahman. A.R. Rahman is actually a person who started music at a very, very young age. Okay, you can take maybe you can other singer, K.J. Yesudas is actually a musician, singer, again, a very popular person at this. In fact, Sachin started at a very early age to play cricket, and he has been, his records have not been broken yet. So, the whole phrase of that, catch them young is actually very useful, because you are actually giving enough time to have this 10,000 dedicated hours for a person to master a particular area. So that way, except those skills that requires physical muscle strength, everything that requires brain capability, the training of 10,000 hours is actually enough. This has been proven by looking at the number of hours required for certain skills to be acquired at a master level. Okay. Now, if you spend something like 4 meaningful hours a day, then you will be a master in 6 to 7 years in a specific area. Yes, any specific area. Okay. And if you, in fact, if you spend only working day, it will take like 9 to 10 hours. But typically, we spend a much short amount of time for the specific domain. It would take like 20 to 30 years for us to master anything. So that is why focused and consistent work only is needed to become a master in our research area. In fact, what many people do is that they will spend something like 500 hours collectively on certain area. This is area X, and maybe another 800 hours on area Y. And then they will be getting into what is called administration in the university or research center. Like something like head dean or scientist, deputy director, and so on. Maybe there they will be sending about 15, 100 hours. So in all these areas, they will develop a certain kind of expertise. By the time the scientific career is over, retirement is actually going to come, and you lost your career, scientific career. So unless you spend a consistent amount of something like, depending on how much time, like 10K hours or more, you will be able to actually achieve what is it called master capability in your research area. So then only you will be able to fruitfully produce research outputs and do the quality of research that you really want. So this consistency is what is actually lacking for many Indian researchers. So that mistake, you should not do, or at least you should keep this in mind in case if you are actually taking up roles that might deviate you from your own career. Now the second question is that what is the meaning of JAC and how to become a JAC? Okay, so this is a very important thing. As I mentioned earlier, this can actually speed up the efficiency of research that you do. And what you require to be a JAC is actually 20 hours. So this 20 hours is nothing but something equivalent to a 1 credit course in a university system. Okay. So imagine that you are taking a 1 credit course, you will get certain familiarity. And that familiarity, a minimal familiarity to use a tool, that is what is actually expected out of this particular skill called a JAC skill. Okay, minimal familiarity of using a tool. So this is actually very important, because as a researcher, you cannot outsource many things that you want to do. You have to do that. And when you do that, it should not become a big burden. And that's why this skill is very important. So what are these skills that we think as a JAC skill? While mastery skill is actually knowledge in the technical area, okay, the JAC skills are actually the small skills, side skills, side gigs that can help you acquire the mastery and move faster in the research direction. The reading skill is a very important skill. Even though reading, but you can have different types of reading to benefit. Writing skill is very important. Unless you know writing, you cannot flourish as a researcher or scientist, because communication to writing media is very important too. Another very important thing which we never realize the value is actually typing skill. In the olden days, everybody used to learn typing by going into a typing institute and used to learn. But these days people do not have, and they all type with just 2 fingers, wasting a lot of time in typing. If your word speed is something like 60 words per minute, you are actually going to save a lot of time in writing a 200-page thesis, compared to somebody who will have something like a 5 word per minute. Okay, so you see that this is actually not a good thing, and you have to do. It's worth investing about 20 hours at a typing institute by paying a few hundred rupees to acquire this skill that will actually help you a lot in your research. Similarly, is important is programming skills. Many people do not actually learn the right programming tool required for the research. They will actually take some other tool which may not be very appropriate. But spending a 1 credit course equivalent time to a particular tool might speed up in your speed up your research and so on. Similarly, experimentation techniques, or attending conferences and lectures in your area as well as in other areas, that can actually be a very, very important skill. Networking is also an important JAG skill. Networking is very important in learning new things from researchers or from your peers. Attending, organizing, or participating in conferences is a very, very important skill, because that only brings you knowledge about what is most recent and how the industry is progressing or research area is progressing, and you actually want to do that. So participation in professional organizations or societies is a very important resource. You have to take membership of professional bodies like IEEE, ACM, EMBS, or Optical Society of America, or whatever is the most important research, more important research topic related. So many people ask, where should I take membership? So this is actually a very, very open question, that my advice to everybody who is asking me where to take my membership is by looking at this particular thing. So you look at where the best people in your research area is taking membership. Okay, so if you are a control system researcher, or if you are a computer researcher, and you look at where are the best people in this area. Okay, and best people is the top class people, the ones who really do very good quality work, and they take membership in the society where they are there. Okay, because when you are when you are actually a member of such a societies, because you will be able to listen to their lectures, you will be able to interact with them. Sometimes you will be able to do similar work, because you want to your work should be equal to or better than theirs. You have to take in the societies where they are present. Then only you will actually develop equal to your peer standards. So such a set of JAG skills are very, very important. So one of the skill that you have to particularly target developing is actually reading skill. So reading is very important. We all do that since our childhood. But for research, there can be multiple kinds of reading. One kind is actually reading the abstract and conclusions. Another is reading the topic sentences. Third is speed reading, which is very valuable. And but most important reading for research is actually the detailed reading, of which I mentioned 2 different types, which I occasionally practice. So reading abstract and conclusions are actually like take a research paper. This is the title of the paper, and this is the abstract of the paper, and you don't have time to read the entire paper. So what you do is you read this abstract, and then you read the conclusion of the paper. So if the author is a good researcher, if the author knows how to write a research paper, he must have written the abstract as well as conclusion very well. So the reading will be good. So by doing this reading, abstract and conclusion, you will be able to very quickly cover several papers, say paper 1, paper 2, paper 3, paper 4, paper 5, and so on. You will be able to say paper N in a very, very short time. You will be able to categorize, say, a cluster of papers, say P1, P2, P3, and maybe another P5, P6, and so on. So you will be able to categorize. This is very important, as I mentioned earlier in the previous lecture, that categorizing that large volume of research papers is very, very important. You should, because your time is very, very limited, and you should know how to categorize this into A or B category out of large number of papers. This reading is actually very effective in doing that. Once you have categorized this, you want to know better about the paper, and that's where you can actually read what is it called a topic sentence. Okay, topic sentence is a sentence that is very important sentence within a paragraph. So imagine that you have a paragraph like this, okay, and this paragraph for good writers, they will write one topic sentence. This is defining what is going to be discussed in the paragraph. And then there will be a set of sentences that are called support sentences. Okay, and these sentences are actually going to elaborate or support the topic mentioned in the topic sentence. Okay, and then it is possible that the author may have given a conclusion sentence which will actually summarize the paragraph. So this is actually the typical structure of a paragraph if the author has known the rules of writing. Okay. Now, what if the paragraphs are written with by a knowledgeable author? Then it is easy for you to get an idea about the good paper by first reading the abstract, then the topic sentences of each paragraph, and finally the conclusions. Okay, so you are actually getting a sense of what is actually presented in the paper in a much more detailed way compared to reading only abstract and conclusions. So this way you are getting one more level detailed reading. Okay, now another way of detailed reading without taking much time is actually called speed reading. Speed reading has been a well-researched subject. There have been a lot of techniques, a lot of books written on this. And the idea of speed reading is actually not read line by line or word by word or sentence by sentence, read clusters of words. So this is the cluster of words. You will fix your eye here, and then what you do is you will sense the words right and left and get a clue of what is written without actually sub-vocalizing that. So, for example, when you read a paragraph like this, this is actually an abstract paragraph. Say, for example, you fixate your eye here and read a few words together in one view. And this view, first we model the network. That the sense of this group of words is actually obtained without actually sub-vocalization. So that way, you will actually fixate either in two places. For example, if you read this particular sentence, this entire set of words will be read with the eye fixing at the center, and another group of words will be read by fixing the eye at the center. So that way, the eye fixations will be very limited. That saves time. Okay. Of course, this can really speed up by capturing the group of words idea by looking at that without sub-vocalization. Sub-vocalization is like the silent reading within our mind. When you do this sub-vocalization, actually the brain is doing the kind of reading, but sound is not coming out through the sound box. The effort required, the time required to read actually is same as louder reading. Okay, so that way by reading the group by group groups of words, you will be able to do really speed improvement in reading. And in fact, if you practice this regularly, you can actually fixate just one place at the whole line of a column, and you can read the whole line, or you can get the idea of the whole line. Okay, you can get the idea, but it need not be 100% clear to you. You will get a very quick idea of what is there. And again, this next line, you will get a very good idea of what is there, but you may not be able to understand that line very well. Speed reading has its own limits. When you read at a very fast speed, compared to the detailed reading. So now, for the detailed reading, as I mentioned earlier, there are multiple ways you can read it. In fact, there are a couple of secret ways of reading too. I'll reveal one such a secret. in fact, the C reading is actually a secret reading that I'm going to reveal to you this today. R reading is actually a detailed reading, which I call is a respectful way of reading. Now, what is the meaning of respectful way of reading? When you read a book, so we actually trust the author. We like the author. We respectfully treat the author. So we respectfully like the materials too. So you have a little bit of respect in your mind about the paper or about the book or about the material, and read in detail. So you appreciate the moments of reading, the ideas in the paper, approaches taken, and the results obtained. And at every step, you actually feel this, respectful, feeling to the author, to the content, and to the paper. And that is actually a very good way of learning the topics in the paper. Learning. Now, this learning is actually slightly different because you are actually understanding the topic of the paper, because you are learning it. You are respectively understanding what you do not know. Okay, that is why this is very good for understanding the material. But understanding is not really the only use for the research. When you read for the research, you actually read for improving. You read for dismantling. You actually read for defeating that person. So that's why the secret method of C reading is actually unique. So C reading means you can use C for content or C for critical. Okay, let's take the bad word like contempt. You are actually creating this feeling of contempt to the author who has written, and with this small contempt feeling, small jealousy feeling, you read about the assumptions taken. This man has taken a very wrong assumption. What kind of person is? Oh, you are actually ruling out the simplification that he has taken, and even the solution approach he has taken is actually not really respected by you while reading. You negate some of the simulations done, and even don't agree with the final results. And when you read this with this attitude and this feeling, you are actually doing, research possibilities. So you are actually creating research. So you are also creating research directions. So he has actually violated certain things. So you have the opportunity to correct it. So he has nullified certain things. You have the opportunity to improvise. He has taken it, simplified it. So you have the opportunity to improvise it. So you can prepare, in fact, dozens of solution directions by this kind of C reading that you may be doing as part of the research. In fact, it is very, very useful. Even from one paper itself, you will be able to come up with several thoughts. Sometimes you can completely dismantle the results that the author has presented when you have this. Now, occasionally, you should read like this so that you will actually do a better research. In fact, even when you read certain papers, whatever portions you do not understand, you can use R reading, and whatever portions you really understand and really know the background, you can do C reading too. So that way you can actually mix and match. And I find that occasionally it is helping me to identify open research problems and how to move ahead in improving some of the problems. Now, the point is read, read, and read. This is one of the very, very important tools to do that. And I would recommend if you can organize or participate in reading camps. Reading camps is like a small groups coming together to collect a large number of literatures and sit together and read massively bundles of papers as much as possible in a very, very short time. So the more you read, the better your brain's ability to speed read, understand, and like the read, and that will actually be very much helpful for your research. Okay, this 10,000 hours that you want to accomplish in an area will be much faster by participating reading camps. And your own the resistance to read, you will have a resistance to read at some age, and that resistance can be removed by participating in camps. If you are a faculty, you can actually bring all students together and give them like 20, 25 papers and ask them to read in one day, so that they will be under pressure to read a lot of papers in a day within a very short time, and make notes or observations. So that will actually encourage them to, go faster in reading as well as in research. Now, you can also use, research solutions, develop research solutions by using the state of mind. Okay, so you must be hearing a lot of these like mindful state, or being aware of the person, or being aware of the current, the power of now, and so on. So, in fact, mindful can be written in two different ways. One way to write is mind with a space, then full, and a full with the double L, or you can write mindful where there is no space and the full is with a single L. Okay, so the difference is actually here. So on the left side of the figure, the mind is filled with junk, trash, thinking trash. A lot of trash thoughts are there in his mind, and he's actually a junkyard of thoughts. Whereas if it's mindful for this particular ambience, you are only thinking about one particular problem. You are only thinking about the current problem that he has in mind. So this is actually very useful for research development. This is actually very useful for going uh, in depth into the problem that is in hand. Uh, uh, the problem can require very complicated solutions. You want to do a research, and in order to go deeper, you need to have a very clear mind that will actually help you that. So how do you use mindfulness? Mindfulness is a state of active, open attention on the present. So this is very, very hard to accomplish, but with practice, many people have done wonders with this. Okay, so these strategies will help you, techniques for calming the mind, identifying the beliefs, and provide opportunities for attention and successful focus. So in fact, it is also very good for social abilities too. Say you are listening to a person, and if your mind is not on the present day, you will not be able to listen, you will not be able to interact. Okay, so this is actually very good. And in fact, most religious traditions use this mindfulness for their benefit. Okay, that is very, very successful tool that religions use. Okay, now let's look at how to do that. Okay, so the aim of mindfulness meditation is to let a thought to be stable. So imagine that you have this brain that is of some size like this, and you are actually going to think about certain thing. Okay, you are actually think about cellular network or something, and you have a problem in your hand. You have base station, you have mobile phones, and you have people moving out and coming in, and so on. So when you think about this problem, suddenly you are actually uh, deviating from that. Okay, it's you thought this for a few moments, then you are actually going to your mind is actually going to wander to another area. So you are now driving a car. You don't realize that you have moved over from that thought to a different thought. Okay, so this is actually very important. When you are thinking about a particular topic, your mind will actually deviate, and only when you realize after some time that you are on topic two, oh, you were thinking something else. So you have to make a very conscious effort to come back to this topic, and again think on that, think of the details, think of the depth of it, think every aspect of it. Some aspects, if it's not clear to your mind, it will look very hazy, and that is actually why the reason you are actually moving away, and you will actually deviate again to a different topic, topic three. And only when you realize much later that you have been thinking about this topic, you have to forcefully bring back to the same topic. And this is going to happen many, many times. And sometimes if you do not come back, and that process is actually gone. So that is where very conscious effort is required to bring back your thinking to the same topic. It is, if you constantly, cautiously try this, you can actually be training yourself to focus on this attention, and slowly your ability to focus on this particular topic will be better and better over time. So this is actually very important, that when you focus on a work, your mind can deviate and you have to realize and bring back your thought to the topic. And again, it will deviate and you have to realize and it will bring back. And after several such attempts, you will slowly find that you are actually improving on your ability to control your thought, focus on a particular, physical matter that you were discussing or thinking about it. And this conscious training will actually be helpful in, avoiding wandering on from one thought to another. So this is actually very, very important to do better research. In fact, many peer-reviewed studies are existing in the literature to show that how meditation, sitting or standing or other kinds is helping people who have difficulties in focusing. So if meditation is very, very effective prevention in the treatment of many diseases as well as behavioral conditions. So similarly, researchers find that mindfulness is very helpful for young researchers and youth to do in schools and so on. In fact, after that, many schools have implemented mindfulness. Every day, 1 hour is actually dedicated just to train them on mindfulness too. So this is a skill a researcher should actually acquire or train himself to do better research. Now, while you can be training your mind to be conscious, aware on the research problem, you can also use the unconscious state of your mind to do research. Okay, this is very important. Many people are successfully able to do that. How do we use unconscious state of our mind to do research? Okay, or the subconscious state of mind to do our research. So, a successful researcher is actually using both. Many people have done, very good scientists have done, unconscious or subconscious mind to do research, while they are able to do, when they are awake to do this, what is it called, conscious mind. So this is a statement uh, attributed to be written by the mathematician Ramanujan. He said, while I asleep, I had seen an unusual experience. There was a red screen formed by flowing blood, as it were. I was observing it. Suddenly, a hand began to write on the screen. I became all attention. That hand wrote a number of elliptic integrals. They stuck to my mind. As soon as I woke up, I committed them to writing. So we can find that this article in Wikipedia as mentioned or written by Ramanujan, who is one of the greatest Indian mathematicians. So what he says is that some of the solutions that we got in very complicated mathematical expressions were obtained during his dream. So he says that during the dream, he saw a dream where goddess appeared and started writing the expressions, and soon after waking up, he wrote that into paper. So, in fact, many studies have been conducted, and some studies, one of the studies in 2004, did 470 Canadian undergraduate psychology students. They were asked to record their dreams for a week, and they also were asked to rate how well they recall their dreams, as well as the intensity, emotion, and impact. And after a week, the participants took a closer look at their more recent, well-recalled dream. And they were asked to make a note of any connections between the dream and events of randomly selected day up to a week before the dream. Okay. Then they were asked to rate their confidence in recalling the event and extent of association between the event and the dream. Okay. A few independent judges were called in. The judges reviewed the dreams and related events and decided whether dreams incorporated solutions to problems stemming from those events. And they concluded that dreams really do try to offer solutions. So the dream world works solve some of our problems, and it can actually churn out insights, advices a night after triggering an event, and also 6 to 7 days later. So they say that dreams can actually solve some of the problems because they are actually the brain's operations of trying out various configurations of neuronal connectivity during the rest time, some of this neural connectivity can actually be influenced by the events that we were thinking or events that happened to us, so that the rewired brain will have solutions. The rewired brains will have solutions that we may not be able to easily think of or create during our conscious state of mind. So that's the reason a successful scientist should use both conscious state of mind as well as unconscious state of mind. So how do you use it as a method for your research? And I would recommend this as I have been thinking about certain problems like this. Sometimes it works, sometimes it will not work. An hour before your sleep, work on your research problem, okay? And keep a paper and pen near your bed. While lying down for sleep, think about various ways of solving the research problem. When the problem is not clear to you, our mind will find a roadblock like situation. You cannot further go. It's like a very, gray area. It's like darkness. You cannot move further into that. We don't see clarity there because our mind doesn't have the solution to that. So while you think and you hit the roadblocks in several directions to solve that, and then you fall asleep. And during this time, when you fall asleep, the brain is actually getting rewiring. That's the reason why, a day before you must have had a problem with somebody, but after a sleep, you forget about the whole issue. But you are calm and good. Your headache has been removed when complete your sleep and so on. So brain rewires, and you can make notes as soon as you get up about the problem that you worked. And in fact, sometimes you will get up during the dream, take notes or draw pictures. Sometimes these pictures may not appear to be meaningful to you right then. You still make notes, draw pictures, whatever you get, you just draw it, and solutions can emerge from that. So even if you do not dream or get out, you still work on the problem at hand when you are still half asleep, and that can actually result in creative solutions for the research problem that you have been working. So a good scientist, you should use, as I mentioned earlier, uh, you know, both the conscious state of mind as well as subconscious or
Somebody should
unconscious.
moderate. There is
There are
background noise.
some
Sorry.
possible ways where you can use the subconscious mind to do better research for you. One is actually to write down your research goals. So this is actually a method used in several uh, 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 techniques, and businessmen use that, politicians use that, and very successful sport persons also use that. This has an impact even in research. When you write down your research goals by the year end, I would like to publish a paper in IEEE transactions. Okay, even though you think it is a very, very hard research goal for a nature like extremely high, impact factor journal. So you know that it is not going to be easy for you. But when you actually see this statement many times over, you will actually get an influence when you read that statement again and again. Okay, it motivates you subconsciously to accomplish your research goal. Okay, so if you are doing a PhD in a university, IAST or elsewhere, if you have the intention to do the best thesis, and you will actually attain this. Okay, I have seen multiple examples of this. Okay, so if you want to do the best thesis and you keep thinking about this and you keep this not beside you, and I would guarantee that you would definitely do a very, very good thesis, and very high chance that you will do the best thesis too. So that way, you should actually keep these calls written. So you will have, subconscious mind helping you to, accomplish it. Okay? In fact, this is a very powerful tool that everybody is using in the business, politics, sports, and other areas. It can actually help you in research goal too. Now, in fact, a few more techniques are there. I don't want to go all other techniques available in this, but if you are interested, you will be able to read through that visualization technique. Okay, Silva method, or even self-hypnotism. The visualization techniques I often practice is on simple matters. Okay, say for example, many times we forget things frequently. Even simple things we forget. Okay, if you go to the shop, you want to buy 5 items, and you forget that you want to do that. Okay, so if you want to take a trip to a store and you go to another store and get if you want to visit 3 or 4 stores, you might miss certain things. So what you can do is just imagine doing that visually. Say you are actually going to shop one, and then you are in your mind, you are actually visualizing that you are going to shop two and getting like 3 items from there, and you are driving through and another shop too. So many such things that can actually be visually represented in mind gives you a bigger learning and gives you a very good solution approach. Okay, if it is to be applied in your particular area, you can actually visualize a whole circuit in your mind. If you're able to visualize a whole circuit, your mind is developing to such an extent that you will come up with very creative solutions. If you can actually visualize the entire communication system in your mind to the sufficient detail, then actually your mind will be able to create new variations of the same system, so that you will be able to come out with the design in mind itself. You only need to write it down neatly. So if you develop the visualization skill, this is actually a very, very good tool to do research. In any area of research, you say social science, computer networking, communication systems, electronic circuits, control system. If you can actually visualize complex control systems in your mind and pass from the input to the output, entire thing, simulate that in mind, you are actually developing your mind to the extent that you will be able to creatively develop solutions. So that is actually a very guaranteed solution for research. And the Silva method is similar to method. You can know there are books to read and practice it. This is again, get into a meditated state. They call that as a Silva level. And in that meditated state, you visualize the solution that you need as if you want to try to solve that. So this is again a combination of subconscious mind and conscious mind are actually used to arrive at a solution. So I do not get the details of this in this particular lecture. So, but this is also a very, very good technique that if you want to try to solve new problems. So we are almost reaching our schedule today. So I'll stop here. The next topic about tools that we want to use, I'll postpone it to the next lecture. In the next lecture, I want to cover the topics such as the last topic for today, using the productivity tool. And also, the next lecture will be covering mainly about solution design. Okay, solution design, which means how do we design a solution for a problem, and what are the general methods that successful researchers have used for arriving at a solution, okay, for problems. Then I will also briefly discuss about this topic. This is one, and this is two, and third thing will be research-oriented teaching. Since this is actually this lecture is intended for research scholars, I'll cover only brief about research-oriented teaching, about how, as a teacher or as a student in such a teacher's class, you should do. So these are the 3 topics that I'll be covering in the next class. So today, what we have covered is the points like set your research aims very high, which means you don't want anything less than Nobel quality research. Okay, because of 2 things. One is that we don't have anybody winning in the independent India a Nobel Prize. Second thing is you want to make a big impact and you want to do Nobel quality research for making that big impact. Okay. In fact, I want to just call out one word, but APJ Kalam had once mentioned why or how the world should remember you after your death. Okay. So whether you want to be remembered as an inventor of some great inventions that will be useful for the humanity for the next 100 or 1,000 or other years, then you have to do a very high impact research. Okay. So that's why you should not aim at anything less. Okay. Second thing
Thank
is
you,
to
Manoj.
analyze yourself using strength, weakness, and opportunities to right area. And third is you have to acquire the master skills in the research direction and jack skills in the associated areas. And fourth is reading, as I mentioned earlier, multiple readings where you can read a book reading or summary reading or conclusion reading. Out of this respectful reading and content reading, you can use a mix of these to get it. So this is actually useful for learning, and this is actually useful for research ideas or directions. So you can use different states of mind, conscious and unconscious or subconscious. Okay. And as I see, many good researchers, because of their involvement into this area, research area, topic, they also do subconscious or unconscious state of their mind for effective research. So let me stop here for now. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me now.
Manoj, sir, thank you very much. In fact, I purposefully did not take the trouble to welcome you to the
No,
second
absolutely not a
talk
problem.
of the Tribe series. And Dr. Usha Devi did it much better than I could have done. Anyway, thanks a lot for joining us again. This is the second lecture, and you have done it much more efficiently and with clarity on how to proceed and what are the different strategies one should adopt to complete the research problem he or she got from the teachers or guides or whatever from the situation. Sometimes situation also can create a problem to a good researcher who want to do noble quality research. We were really impressed by your performance for the past 10 to 20 minutes. I thank all the participants for lending him a respectful eye and ear to listen to every word he spoke today. This is what I have to tell. There is one more lecture in this series, and I am really sure because Manoj is a true friend in all academic needs. He had with me several times, and this with short notice. And he's a very busy person, and situation is going to be tighter in IAC and all other academic issues. We are slowly coming out of the pandemic, but so he has to do actual research activity, experimental and other type of research activities he mentioned in the lecture and in the previous lecture. So we look ahead to your constant support in making this 5 webinar series a grand success. And I request Eldo to pass on the feedback link for issuing certificates for all the participants. Thank you. I conclude here. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you so much.
Yeah, Manoj sir, a very good session. Thank you. I was listening. No, I just joined 5 minutes later, but I was listening throughout. A very nice session and very useful for the research aspirants. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for inviting me over.
Manoj sir, I had a small question.
Please.
It was nice to have a second webinar of equally or better than the first one with a lot of information and a lot of quality. My question is, this most of the researches nowadays happen on an academic perspective, but if rather than academic perspective, it happens on an industry perspective with industry support. It could be really, really beneficial to the nation as a whole, as a society, and it will return whatever money and time invested back, isn't it? So how it can be made possible?
So you are talking about the research that is applicable to the industry and the general world. In fact, the true scientific research, for example, the example I mentioned, C.V. Raman's Raman effect, it's a research output in the physics area. But there are so many companies producing Raman spectroscope, Raman, other meters and so on based on that. We are all using it in several laboratories and so on. So the true scientific research outcome is actually useful for the industry, actually useful for the scientific, all aspects of human life. Same thing, as I mentioned, why this novel quality is highlighted. The Nobel requirements for the Nobel Prize is actually to make it useful for human beings. A scientific theory that is not going to make any significant difference in the quality of life is not going to be considered for a Nobel Prize award or equivalent recognitions. So that way, in fact, a very, very useful, impactful research is measured by the utility only. Okay? Now, how we want to do, in India, the research impact is actually much less, and research depth is also much less. If we improve that, automatically it will be useful for the industry. Now, when we do research relevant to the industry, we are actually doing research in the engineering domain. Okay, true scientific revelation of natural facts and figures may not immediately be useful for the industry in the next maybe 4 or 5 years or so, but maybe 25 years down the line that will be finding some industrial application. Okay, for example, I want to say that when Boolean algebra, which was invented as a mathematical solution or research outcome, nobody found any particular use with that. But 200, 300 years down the line, when binary or digital systems were invented, Boolean algebra found an enormous amount of application. Now, all computers we use that. All logic gates actually use Boolean algebra principles only. So that way, that was a profound and impactful research too. So any research that is impactful will actually be useful for industry too. And so we need to do only thing is the research that will make a difference, which will automatically be useful for industry.
Thank you, Manoj.
Yes.
Thank you, Manoj, once again. Yeah. We can have another 2 to 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Questions.
So I have one question from Siju Kalada on how to achieve mindfulness. Can you suggest some techniques? Okay. In fact, there are so many techniques in almost every religion. There are techniques to do mindfulness. Okay, so the one which I mentioned in the solution in the slide is actually you think about anything. Okay, you think about what you want to do. Okay, you think about creating. Just imagine I want to think about the preparation of the slide. Okay, I am thinking that first there is an intro slide, then there is a slide on agenda side. Okay. And then I would, item 1, item 2, item 3. I'm thinking about like one item 1, what should I put in here? So I'm finding some kind of a mental block here to think about this particular problem of what should be the agenda 1. My mind, without my permission, will deviate from this thought, and will be, enjoying something else which is no relevant with this topic 1. So this is the topic 1 I started. I want to really focus as an active research on how to prepare these slides. But my mind is doing something else. And I do not realize it until after some delta T. This delta T usually is very high for most of us. You will realize it after several minutes. If you just use a watch to identify this, you will find that several minutes you have wandered from this thinking. And when you realize it, you have to bring it back to this thought and think about it. If you don't have a solution for 1, leave that. Let's move to solution 1. Yes, here I have some idea to do that. And even now, second thing, I'll go to a different thought. Again, another delta T2 I spent here. The ability to bring back our conscious thought to this particular topic until we like that ability, bringing back, this is actually what is important for our ability to consciously do that. Okay, so if you this can be practiced, and in fact, even if you practice it for 1 day or 2 days, 3 days, you will find a significant amount of improvement. That's what my experience is. So you can practice it, and you can focus on a specific thing that you want to do with much better attention and with much better detail. This word detail is some relationship with the clarity of thinking and the depth of knowledge and the ability to create these unknown things here. If I don't have the depth and detail of thinking, I will not be able to create anything here. So if you have clear thinking, I'll be able to very easily create this. So you are creating a small circuit and you don't know what is the next component. That means you will have a problem. So when you think detail, this can be easily created as a subsequent building block. So as you know, every research solution is nothing but a collection of several smaller solutions. And this detailing can be achieved by focusing on the problem repeatedly and for long duration. In fact, you will be able to accomplish very complex, output when you have this practice. So this is one of the techniques which I found very easy and non-religious techniques. But there are many other religious techniques too. Like, you carry a small, mala, mala with pearls, and you just count. That has a very, very impact. In fact, almost every religion uses that as a very simple and very powerful method to improve the focus. And I challenge you, you just try this for 1 week. You carry just a whole, whenever you have a confusion, whenever you have a, ability to, whenever you do not have the ability to focus, you just take this mala and do whatever you want to repeat it that many number of times. If it's 100 times, if it's 108 times, 64 times, you do that, repeat that, you will find a significant amount of order coming to your mind. And that order will help you build the details of everything that you are thinking. Just try this. I know I want to tell you this. You just try this for 7 days and you see whether your mindfulness has improved or not. I bet you will definitely improve.
Thank you. I have a question because
yes,
people never, especially engineering research students as well as guides, they work in an atmosphere. There are a lot of other deviations possible. Like, even in IAC, where I did my master's, and in all academic institutions, often students say that environment is too noisy or distracting. How do, as a good researcher, as a research guide, you defeat that complaint from the students and fellow academicians?
Yeah, actually,
research professor at Institute of Science and Technology, Trivandrum. We are all eager to know that trick, especially for the students and the young teachers who are just taken up research activity guidance.
Okay. So, you are talking about the distraction, right? This ability to concentrate in the presence of noise and other distracting environment. Did I answer? Did I hear your question well? So you were asking a question about the ability to focus in the presence of distractions or noisy atmosphere.
Yeah, exactly.
So actually, it's very easy, surprisingly easy. And I'll tell you this, I had an Italian friend called Nicola Baldo. This was actually a co-researcher when I was working in US as a researcher, okay? And he sits at his table. This is his table, and he sits at his table with a chair. He is sitting here, imagine that way. And we will go around him and we will just chat, we'll just create some noise and so on. But I surprisingly found him is not distracted at all. So then I asked him what, he is not responding. I called him, he's not responding. He was very deep and focused on some work. Then I actually touched him and woke him up from his, and he then, what did he 2 years, he took out something from his ear that was actually called an ear plug. There was something that is available in the market called ear plug. When you are doing serious research for a certain amount of time, maybe half an hour, 1 hour, and you can actually buy the ear plug and put it in your, absolutely no distraction from surroundings will come to you. And then the other senses from which you can distract it is actually the eyes. Eyes, if you can control, that can be affected. And if mobile phones you can control, this external noisy signals can be stopped for a certain amount of duration. That way you can do and very, very attentive research. So eyes, ears, and mobile phones. So these are the 3 things that can actually distract a researcher.
Switch off your mobile phone, put a, it's not earwax, some kind of earbuds.
Yeah, in fact, in many of the academic campaigns, earplug is very important. Earplug is available in Amazon and other places. We can buy and plug it in here, and you do much better focus.
Professor Manoj.
Yes.
Like your last session, this also I really loved, and I will pick up just 2 points of what you said. One is on jack of other skills. Whatever is the main area of research, picking up other skills, the importance of that. See, for example, I was a theoretical physicist. This is the input I'm giving for other friends, young friends.
Yeah, thank you.
As a theoretical physicist, I was a good theoretical physicist. And for obviously being a theoretical physicist, I had to pick up programming skill. That is a jack of all, right? The programming
yeah,
skill that
right.
to work on IBM 370 during late 70s, I had picked up programming skill. Ultimately, what I was a good physicist and good programmer also. Ultimately, what that resulted in, I joined ISRO not as a physicist. I joined ISRO as a software scientist, and then moved to TCS.
Yeah. Right.
And so for the last more than 3 decades, I am an IT professional, not a physicist.
Yeah.
And second thing I wanted to say, I am 68 today. I'm not a current researcher. Of course, I do think about HR issues today. And I tell you what is my learning today. It's important learning. I think the youngster should appreciate that. The important second learning for me, first was a supplement to what you said, jack of all trades. And the second one, see, for example, I have heard about, see, I had been to Ramanujam Museum in Kumbakonam, the birthplace of Ramanujam, where Shastra University is maintaining a beautiful, for other youngsters, you must know, there is a beautiful Maths Museum. Maths Museum is managed by Shastra University in his birthplace, Kumbakonam. I had been there. And in spite of my lot of respect for Ramanujam, the story of him getting many things from Namagiri Tayar, his family deity is Namagiri Tayar. That is what that URL you also shared today, where he got dream and in a red background, lot of letters, formula came in, right? Mathematical formula came in, and then he wrote down. This I have heard about this earlier also. I have seen that also, that note. But to be honest, now you as a true researcher, I cannot ignore that with others' experience, because particularly a person like Ramanujam's experience and people like him, it is really ridiculous, because some of the rational thinkers can easily ridicule people like Ramanujam and brush aside these things, this experience. I was also one of those rationalists who was not readily accepting the experience of Ramanujam, which I find now, after listening to you and also after exactly referring to that interesting reference to a Canadian young research, undergraduate students, around 270 students, and linking their dreams and with their actual problems and solutions. It was really amazing. So at 68, it was a learning for me. Don't ignore others' experience. Thank you.